I'm your token analog kind of craftsman of the group. It seems I've been listening to some of the lectures, and I think that's probably one reason I'm here. In short, to introduce you to the company, there's the cafe. We've been around for about 20 years. The company was born in 1993. To give you some perspective, I can remember years after opening the cafe getting a call from one of my friends in Seattle who was telling me about this new thing, email. I mean, that's kind of shows you how far we've come. I mean, what's important, I guess, about La Colombe is within another term, the coffee space. I mean, if you're a restaurant or a hotel or a coffee geek or a cafe, you definitely know who we are. We're one of a couple companies who are kind of leading the future in coffee, even though it is, again, it's very analog. Are you losing me? Good. And that's the background. This is the first time I've ever actually had the opportunity to speak about brand, which is becoming more and more, popular. It seems like with everyone. There was a number of years ago, to guys like me, the word brand or branding was difficult to hold in your mouth and not spit it out. I mean, for us, that represented something that big, giant corporations did. It was their illusion, they were emitting some kind of personality and trying to get you to believe that they had other core values other than profit. But as we kind of move forward, you realize that brand, at least within my mind, is, it's the personality of your company. I'm not a publicly traded company, and I never will be. My friends from the 90s want me to do that. I just won't do it because of brand, because of the personality of the company. And people ask you, say, well, okay, it's coffee. I mean, seriously, how complicated is it? I mean, we're not doing some of these things that the other speakers are talking. And how do you stay relevant in that space? I mean, it seems to change every year. I started roasting for his company in 1982. They had 3 cafes at the time. It was my first job outside of the farms. Well, that company is named Starbucks. You've seen it's kind of changed since the year I started. And coffee goes through these metamorphoses, it seems like, every couple of years. I mean, how do you stay relevant? And the answer is actually the company personality. A lot of it is the brand. A lot of people think it's because, if you know a little bit about me, it's because I manage the company philanthropically. We do a lot of work that's important to us outside of our profit motive, and that keeps us relevant. It's not true. I don't manage my company philanthropically. No, I manage the company as if it were and I was a decent person. It's very simple, and that is how I view the brand. Some people say it's because I'm passionate about coffee. Don't you hear that a lot? I mean, recently I was watching TV and some person in a lab coat told me that they were passionate about tires. And then I heard later on that evening someone was passionate about insurance. I think we've lost the meaning of the word of passion. Because I'm not passionate about coffee. And I know that sounds sinful, but I'm absolutely not passionate about coffee. Passion to me is this kind of red hot spiking emotion. It's like epiphany. And you can't remain permanently in the state of epiphany or passion. So it's absolutely not true. I'm not passionate about coffee. And other people think it's because of my margins. I mean, I have sinful margins because it's coffee. And so therefore, I have all this lax space in my profit and loss where I can do things that actually are meaningful and that make me a human being and make my company a human being. Well, that's not true either. I happen to believe that coffee is a democratic luxury. Half of this country is poor. And I believe that coffee should be within the reach of everyone. And so, no, I do not have this deep, deep margins that people think. In fact, over the last 2 years, if any of you trade commodities, shame on you. But, this has been a really difficult time for coffee roasters. And in terms of the things that I do that make us human, I stepped up my game, even though, I mean, we were swimming near the Titanic. I mean, there was no water. And really, still, because of the contracts the way they are, I'm not going to see water for another 3 or 4 weeks, which goes to show you it really has nothing to do with my margin. It might have a little bit to do with the fact that I do not believe in this excuse that every corporation has the God-given right to do only one thing, and that is maximize their profit. I think that they do that at their own peril. I think that if you let other people define you eventually, find out your true character, and this is really what I'm talking about, is the reality of who you are as your brand. people will eventually define you. Like Google is now the man, right? He's, what is it called? You know, the Big Brother, I should say. He's Big Brother. They didn't define themselves and actually stick to, you know, their core belief, which is do no harm. And you'll find that many corporations, as they get bigger and bigger, they start losing their ethics and their ethos and their way. And now they're just laying out there and could easily become irrelevant. And I have no aim whatsoever to ever become irrelevant. So this is how I do it. This is not so much a lecture on what you should do. This is a lecture about how I did it, and I'll try to convince you why that might be a good way. I mean, in real terms, I mean, there are a lot of people out there, you know, particularly when I lost my mind in Antarctica or, you know, at altitude, people think I'm crazy that I marched to a different drummer or flute or whatever I'm marching to. I don't think I have enough time to defend myself in that category, but, you know, I look at my company differently, and I truly am going to say this, and I'd like you to hold on to it, and that is, they told me that I could create this entity or a being, and it's called La Colombe. And I took it to the extreme. There is someone in my mind that's La Colombe, and it is a true person. And in that person, I've embedded him with the different characteristics that I have, that Doug has, and a lot of the people in my company have, right? It is a true person, and I can even tell you, you know, what they wear and their size, and it comes to a point where this individual can make decisions on their own. I mean, I'm not, you know, hearing him speak in my head or anything dangerous like that, but I get a feeling that the company can, I mean, even within the company, go, this is so La Colombe, and this is so not La Colombe. And it assists us in you know, navigating for year after year, you know, within a very competitive environment, which is coffee. You know, for me, it makes it a lot easier. I mean, you see corporations or companies, even my size, that are spending like oodles of money year after year in order to make people want to have a relationship with them. At first, that's some uphill climbing when I think of it, because already you're asking people to have a relationship with an inanimate object. You know, that's not healthy. You know, and particularly an inanimate object with one basic goal. You know, for me, I thought it would be a lot easier for people to have a relationship with my company if at least I had an idea of who that person was, and that person is La Colombe. And I don't know how other people do it. I mean, obviously they're much smarter people than I. But it seems to me that a lot of people, without doing that, have to manage so many things. And, you know, some of the things are just managing lies. You know, you didn't really create that person, and so you're trying to create an idea that you have. You're trying to say that this person, this company, this entity has certain ethics, when in fact it does not. It just seems to me that we could go back, and this is the new analog. Maybe it's neo-traditional. I look back at guys like me who've been roasting for a long time, and there's something you can learn from me. You know, that if you're really, truly just actually doing it, it's much easier to communicate it. If you actually really do care, and you're not, I'm not saying immoral, I'm saying amoral, that if you are, you know, moral in your way, at least you have an idea, it's so much easier to communicate it. So when Pierce comes into the cafe and talks to a person, they've been bathed in this idea without even me lecturing them. They get that moral structure. You know, I don't have to sit around and worry about motivating people like, how do I get them to get off the nut? You know why? Because they know that they're drilling wells in Africa. They know that they have thousands of children that are dependent on us. They know that. And they know what I believe. You know, and they know that a lot of times our aesthetic is simply because I like it. It's not pre-programmed, because that looks pretty good. And we don't open at 7:30 because I don't like getting up early. I don't. And I know I'm leaving it on the table, but I don't want to ask anyone else to get up early. It's irritating. And no, when you come to La Colombe cafes, we don't make you a sandwich because I don't want the dialogue to be about mustard. You know, and it really, frankly, I don't like making sandwiches at all. I'd rather have someone else make me a sandwich. And so when you come to my cafe, I will serve you a coffee, and perhaps you could make me a sandwich. You know, I want the dialogue to be about coffee. And you know what? I tell you, let's say if I died tomorrow and some institution took over my cafes, they would cease being so wonderful because of those reasons. Because there will be Dorito grabs bags available, and there will be an ATM in there. And you know what? I know that oasis that I'm trying to create for people will disappear because I need more money, right? Really, I mean, that's the thing. And maybe the ethics will go away because you know what? The orphanage in Uganda is starting to cost us a lot. So maybe we can take that off the budget. It's not happening. It's not happening because I don't even have control of that real person anymore. I mean, Colombe is a male. He's better dressed than me. Most people are. Here's another. He doesn't live in a gated community. And a lot of us, when you begin selling lots of things, it's very simple for you to begin living in a gated community. You know, it's the corner office, and you know, there's all these barriers between you and reality. And the reality are the people, those people that you serve, or the farmers that you read. He doesn't live in a gated community. And I like to think of him again, I just made this up today, so you guys, the neo-traditional, I love that concept. Kind of like the new analog. And he's not an artist. A lot of coffee people will try to tell you that they're an artiste, which is hilarious because it's not true. You know, coffee people are not artists. I mean, you have to go on, let's say, you know, the third floor of Musée d'Orsay and tell me that, because now tell me you're an artist with all this shit on the walls, right? It's because you're not. Or they'll tell you they're scientists, right? They have all their beakers and things. They're not scientists. You have to go to CERN somewhere, you know, in Switzerland, and that's science. No, they're simple craftspeople. They work with their hands. And so Colombe is a simple craftsperson, and he behaves like it. So here, we're going to go through some acid tests, right? And I guess this is how I got it through my head, was, okay, let's interview Colombe. And maybe when you get home, or maybe you can do it now, you kind of say, well, you know, I'm a small entrepreneur, or I'm a medium-sized company, or I'm AT&T. And Becky, where are you? Nike, where are you, Becky? Okay, I think I can't see a thing, okay? Oh, there she is, she's back here. I promised her that if I say anything that's bullshit, she can scream bullshit from the crowd. The reason why is because I'm not a brander, and she is like one of these brainiac, maniac kind of types that does branding. And so already tonight she's called bullshitting me once, so I want to keep my ear out. Becky, I promise it. I promise I'll try not to bullshit. Okay, so here's how it works. So I'm interviewing Colombe, and in a way, it's a way of actually generating your person. And the first question is pretty simple. And all this sounds really analog to you, but trust me, there's something inside this. And it's, you know, so it's, let's say a first date, it's a speed date with Colombe. And your first question is pretty basic, like, who are you? Who are you? Now, a lot of us will slam brand back at you. You know, we're inventing the future. We are alternative energy. No, I'm asking who you are. And the answer to that one is, well, Colombe is an American. You know, a lot of us at Colombe weren't born in America, but the corporation, the company, the entity is American. It was born in America in 1993. You know what kind of American it is? We kind of talked about that. You know, it's a craftsman, someone who has, you know, is in it for the long haul. You know, craftspeople have this knack of never abandoning their craft or selling it. It's who they are, and it defines them. And this is Colombe. It's here forever. It is not selling out. It's not going public because it defines itself by its craft. And in this case, its craft is coffee roasting. And then here's the tough question, you know, how do you see other Americans? Isn't that kind of part of defining who you are? And in our case, you know, we look at it, and this goes back to that kind of gated community thing. Colombe recognizes what Americans are. I mean, first, they're not all potential clients. I mean, that right there will probably shift you towards the idea that you're not getting this. Everybody is a potential client. I mean, if you ever met a person who, you know, let's say their name is Betty, and they brand talk at you, and then you find out they only have one objective in life, and that they don't recognize that America, half of them are poor. I mean, they're not alive, are they? And that most of the time, we're really stressed out people because we put ourselves, and our society puts us under a huge amount of stress, and that we're being marketed to it constantly, just being slammed at. I mean, you can't even look at your phone now without getting an ad in it, right? Right, an ad, right in your eye. You can't, there's always an ad going right in our eyes, and it stresses us out. And we don't have a lot of time. No, it's true. Try to not see an ad for a half a day. It's impossible, right? That's quintessentially American. I'm not commenting it's good or bad. I'm just recognizing it. Does Colombe recognize this? It does. It also recognizes that Americans aren't gullible, perhaps for a short period of time. we might be gullible. I know I am. But eventually, I get it, right? So I guess maybe a break here is like, if you're strictly a corporation, you have to understand that. That's a really important thing to understand. I look at if your business model is to dupe people for the long term, it won't work. I can think of things, and this is going to be on the internet, I'll be sued for this, but I look at like vitamin water, okay? Vitamin water. If that kind of thing is your business plan and you want to be here for the long haul, I don't advise it, because eventually people are going to turn that label around. And they're going to read it, and they're going to realize that that has the nutrients of Kool-Aid, right? And like most business plans, like vitamin water, who built a great brand, right? I mean, Americans don't mind initially if they want to be lied to, because people wanted to have a sugary drink that they felt made them healthy, right? But eventually, products like that end up where they deserve to belong. I mean, and that's, the shelves of Walmart. I mean, if that's your strategy, right? Most medium-sized companies like us, that's not the strategy. Is to make a big hit and get out. Not craftspeople, at least. And I just feel the suit falling on my shoulders from vitamin water right now. I just suddenly feel the weight of okay. So the next thing, I guess, is when you're interviewing the person is, how do you see the world? I mean, that's an important defining quality of an individual. I mean, do they even recognize the planet? I mean, you do realize, right, that if you look in a dictionary under human being, none of us are in it. Not here, not us. We're the outliers that they take off the sample. I mean, the planet is populated with people who are just nothing like us whatsoever. The actual medium, she's a woman. She's got loads of kids. She's got dark skin. She has no education. She's being oppressed, and she's worried about what's to eat tomorrow. That's human. That's a human being. And La Colombe, since we source coffee in third world countries, it's important that we recognize that that's actually the human state. And as an individual, my character, at least mine is set aside from La Colombe, is defined by that. Even if I am a CEO or founder, right, I need to look at the world as it really truly is. And then, here comes the hard part. Well, no, you know what? I'm going to stop in it because I just added another one. This is how organic this thing is, right? How do you treat your friends? This is one of my questions. And I guess by friends, you would say that would be customers and employees. Because that's kind of a defining quality of a person. How do you treat your employees? And how do you treat your customers? Do you treat them as an opportunity every time you see them? Or do you treat them like a human being? Is your employee something that is there to produce for you? Or do you treat them like a human being with cares, wants, wishes, lives, with a home life? This will go a long way in defining who you are. This will go a long way of defining what I should probably say of not just brand, but the back of the house part of your brand, not the front of the house. The front of the house being how you tweet it or whatever that is, and how you emit your brand. This is the real thing. A lot of companies have 1% back of the house and 99% front of the house, and they do extraordinarily well. It mystifies me. I mean, I've met people who have brands, but no products. And for a guy like me, I just don't get that. I mean, how can you emit from a source emit without a point of source? What I'm talking about that is that source point. You talk about photons or light and the star that emits it. I say that, the analog way is actually get your stuff in order at the source. And you create this human being, this entity, in its entirety. And you don't fall into the excuse of, okay, let's admit it. I mean, the U.S. government has told us that our corporations have rights, just like human beings. Right to free speech, right to all these things. But we never fill out the rest of the form, do we? We never fill out the rest of the form and who that entity really is. And that's what I'm challenging you to do, not just because it's the good thing to do, although it is the good thing to do, but because there are consequences to it. Because people will be more likely to have a relationship with a true entity or a true being, with true convictions. And finally, this is the tough question. what are you going to do about all that stuff that you know? Right? What are you going to do about it? And that's why I say I don't manage my company philanthropically. No, I don't. Because my company is a decent human being. And I can tell you something about human beings. Okay, now what's the lotto at today? Like 540 something oodles? Yeah. Okay, now imagine for a second a human being won the lottery. Okay, it's going to happen. But one of you, okay, I don't know who it is, so don't get too excited. But one of you won $500 million. And let me tell you what you'll do. The first thing you're going to do is be charitable. Right? I know every single one of you go, that's right, I'd probably peel off some and I would give it to people whom I love or for people who deserve it. The second thing you do is probably jack in your job. Okay. You jack in your job, maybe, a lot of you. I wouldn't. But, La Colombe, well, it jacks in his job. It doesn't want to make you sandwiches. Right? And third thing, right? I'm just saying. The third thing you'd do is you'd probably ask yourself eventually when you finally come down from the high is, what am I going to do to make this planet a better place? You know why? Because you're a decent human being. Now let's assume that a corporation wins that money. What happens? Do they peel it off and give it to Annie M? No. Are they going to hook up the cab driver? No. Right? Are they going to really? Well, they're going to sock it away, pay the minimum amount of taxes, and go to the next year. And here's the crazy thing. La Colombe, companies like me, we win the lotto every year. Every single year. You look at Apple, they win it every day, right? And I'm probably the only living human being who's going to say this. Steve Jobs is an asshole. Steve Jobs, I know, God bless your soul, right? But you, for me, wasted your life because you socked up all that money. You won the lotto day after day after day. But we all forgave him. We all forgave him because he was a savant. Now, if that's your business plan, good luck to you. If you're a savant, really, there's only a couple of them, right? Seriously. And then you'll be a savant with the aesthetic of his? No way, okay? It's not happening. And I'm sorry if you're all Apple fans, but the truth of the matter is we forgave him because he never gave back a dime, right? And I hold him responsible for that. But again, I forgive him, and he's just like a superstar. But if that's your business plan, I'll tell you what it sounds like to me. You're like the kid who's not going to study, who's not going to be a decent human being because one day they're going to be Michael Jordan, right? It sounds foolish, doesn't it? So I would kind of leave the analogy of Apple aside and say, okay. There's only a couple geniuses, and genius is like passion, isn't it? We hear it all day long. There's a genius. I bet you he didn't test out a genius, right? It's just, there's so few of them. And it's like, and this man, I said, Jobs probably tested out as a genius. And if your plan is all contingent on you being as smart as him, wow, dude, seriously, get a backup plan, right? And I'm the backup plan. I'm that backup plan. I'm saying, guess what? You don't have to be so brilliant because people want to have relationships with decent people. It's really simple, right? And you don't have to hear the should have and could have, right? And you can even do a Heisman on your Mother Teresa, right? Like I do, because I just don't believe it, right? I know why people relate to La Colombe. It's the same reason I relate to it, right? Because I recognize that it's a decent human being, right? I don't have to go through all those mental exercises to figure out how to get your attention. Because people at the end of the day like decent people, right? And then finally, I guess, another question is, how do you treat strangers? How do you treat strangers? As an individual, are you one of these people who are just, wow, like everybody, whoa, right? Just totally jacked up by everybody you meet, right? You don't even know them, right? A real person doesn't do that, right? Oh my God! It's like, they're so jacked because they're going to get your money. I'm not that jacked when I first meet you. I want to figure out who you are. You want your company to take the time. Like, today we have, right? I try to go in a little bit quieter on that one, right? No, don't friend me right away. That's weird, right? Okay. You're a stalker, right? So La Colombe does that, and I recommend as your backup plan, that's the Todd Carmichael plan, that's the La Colombe plan, that you kind of just take a chill pill, and you look at it for long stretches. It's all about endurance. The medium-sized company, the analog company, it's all about endurance. And it's staying aware and staying conscious. Yeah, guess what? I have a website. My first one was in Flash, okay? I mean, in the old days, I mean, man, I remember I got my first cell phone. It was like the size of my head, right? But since then, you have to stay relevant. And the way you stay relevant is you keep an open heart. It's the easiest way. You know, and as your lotto winnings get bigger and bigger, you keep that in mind, right? So that's your analog speech for the day. And I suppose I should end this way. I'm Todd Carmichael, and some people say I march to a different drummer. Thanks.